Hello and welcome to the Pop Pod. I am Sam, also known as Pop Sam Cam. Today's episode is another edition of This Album Changed Pop, and this is one that I am particularly excited about because I've been in love with this record since the moment that it came out, and I think that we're just seeing its influence right now in pop music. It is Solange's True. Let's get into it. Before we do though, if you love this podcast, if you're a casual listener, I would love if you would follow it so you can join us for all our episodes or just the ones that interest you. Also, a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Music goes a long way for the visibility of this podcast. I really appreciate you guys. And if you're not already in our Discord, in the show notes down below is where you can find that and join a community of pop people talking about pop music on the daily. That is my spiel that you're probably all sick of right now. Let's get into Solange's True. Tell me the truth, boy, I'm not losing you for good. Let's set the scene. The year is 2012. Solange has gone independent as an artist. She had had some success prior with her album Soul Angel and the Hadley Street Dreams, which was released via Interscope Records, and instead she signs with Terrible Records, which is a label run by members of the indie band Grizzly Bear. It's a definite shift for Solange, but Solange had always kind of been a rebel in music, playing things much differently to her sister Beyonce, who has always managed to play it on a grander, much more mainstream stage. Solange has always had an element of alternative to her music, and she embraced it at this point in her career. It's an interesting point to embrace it because the big songs in 2012 are kind of euphoric pop songs like Call Me Maybe by Carly Rae Jepsen, Starships by Nicki Minaj, What Makes You Beautiful by One Direction, Set Fire to the Rain by Adele. These are much different things to what Solange is used to doing. She basically breaks through and decides very early on as a teenager that she wants to make a reggae record. Soul Angel and the Hadley Street Dreams goes much more in a Motown direction. But there's a huge shift when it comes to True, and that is that she starts working with collaborator Dev Hynes, who is also known as Blood Orange. Blood Orange had also been making this kind of like bedroom pop alternative music and had had some success himself. He always felt to me like he had a little bit of a pop flair to him, and it totally comes out on this EP True that they release, well, Solange releases with Dev Hynes as a co-producer on it. And True is a shift for Solange because for somebody who had always been kind of denying pop in some kind of way and not letting that influence come totally through, she decides to embrace it on True, but embrace it in a Solange way. So Solange goes alternative and basically finds a kinship with Dev Hynes. This partnership is basically built off a shared love for like 80s pop, new wave, R&B, and Prince-influenced music as well. And Dev Hynes had also talked about how when he usually writes songs, he has a female voice in his head, and I guess Solange becomes that female voice. Now, this becomes an issue of contention throughout this era because the way that Dev was talking about what he did on this work caused a little bit of a rift between the pair later on down the track. But I truly do believe that Solange is the visionary on this project and brings it to life because during this time, she's listening to a lot of sort of new wave 80s stuff. She's listening to Michael Jackson. She's also listening to a lot of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis work, who of course worked on a lot of the Janet Jackson material too. And that shines through in this, but at the same time that this is happening, you're also starting to see this alternative pop wave that is being led by names like Grimes. And these are artists who are like bringing more traditional pop melodies to very underground experimental production. And it's very different to what is happening in the mainstream, and it kind of catches the blogosphere, I guess the blogosphere's delight in some sort of way. This becomes the sound of the time and leads us on to artists like Kelela and Sky Ferreira as well. These artists who are working in more traditional pop structures, but colouring it with something a little bit more interesting, to be honest. And True definitely does that. The thing that I love most about True is this is a 7-track EP basically, but for me, it feels like a fully formed piece of work. I feel like the best pop is direct, straight to the point, and cut of any of the fodder. And this EP completely does this. It is just the hits. It is 7 hits basically, some of Solange's finest work. And that all kicks off with a song called Losing You. I remember hearing Losing You for the first time alongside the video of Solange. I believe the video was done in South Africa. Solange is looking a little bit preppy, but with like mismatched patterns, looking very alternative, and also just embracing her own sort of style and becoming really like kind of an alternative it girl in many ways. But in terms of the music, I remember hearing it for the first time and just feeling like something in my brain was rewiring. And I felt this at multiple times throughout my sort of, I guess, life of listening to music. And Lord's Melodrama, which is another album that I've done as part of this series, was definitely part of that. But Losing You was the start of it. And I thought what was so cool about Losing You is it's essentially just this looped beat, this like looped blood orange beat that just like goes over and over and over. And through that, with just like voice, melodies, and harmonies, Solange creates one of the most special songs of this millennium, I think, and one of the most like groundbreaking pop songs. And what I think is so cool about Losing You is there's this warmth that comes in the synth and the voice, but it's also so danceable and euphoric as well. And I remember seeing her live during this period, and she like whipped into this dance break that was just like just complete joy to watch. And yet there's something about this song that is so melancholic at the same time as well. And that pairing of melancholy with joy is something that is so important to this project in general. And it's something that she actually talked about when she was talking about the EP as a whole. She said, this is a dance record, but the lyrics can get pretty dark at times. And that is so true of True. Excuse the pun. True is an album that is essentially acts as a breakup record, but there's some catharsis in the way that you're able to dance through it. And you're able to dance through it in so many different ways. I think like the most obvious is Losing You, which has this real groove to it. But then there's a song like Don't Let Me Down, which is like slinky and elongated and much slower and like almost like a Stevie Wonder slow jam. If I'm with you, then rest assured that I'm in love with you. And she brings this like vocal finesse to it that has so much, I keep saying the word melancholy, but there's just such a sadness, particularly to the way that she just says, don't let me down. There is almost like a desperation to it. And yet it's all being explored on the dance floor. And I think for me, as somebody who was learning about pop music and kind of unlearning a lot of the things that I'd learned about pop music, which was basically that it was manufactured crap, to be able to hear somebody who is bringing so much emotion and so much feeling and so much flavor to it and pulling from these influences that are so integral to the development of pop music was quite frankly a joy to see. It made me go back and discover the works of Prince and Michael Jackson and really tap into the production of those kind of works and find an appreciation for it and find that when pop music is done well, and I think in a lot of scenarios it's done well, it can really just emote in like the most spectacular kind of ways. And that's exactly what this EP does. Solange said on it, I literally gave up my sanity for a while to do this record. We were waking up in the morning and just making music all day and night. It just started to wear on me in so many different ways. I started having these crazy panic attacks. And that encapsulates the record so well to me because in creating this dance music, they push themselves to the absolute brink. And you can hear it, as I said, in something like Don't Let Me Down, which is so desperate, but then Lovers in the parking lot almost feels like she's just like crying out.
Played around with your heart. Now I'm playing around in the dark.
And this is what I found that's unique about Solange in general as an artist, is the way, the places that she's willing to pull herself and push herself in order to get the result that she really wants. And I think she's such a visionary in the sense of she knows emotionally what she needs to get out of this work, and she is going to go there until she gets it. I think we see it much more fully formed on a record like A Seat at the Table, which is just like total catharsis for her by going back on her history and her heritage and her roots, but also picking through some of her personal quarries as well in order to form this picture of who Solange is and why she's here and why she goes through the trauma that she goes through. And I don't think she's quite there at True, but you can tell that she's starting to get there. And I just love that she chooses dance music and pop music as a bed to explore it. This record isn't meant to be just Solange and Dev, but the two of them become so close artistically. And she says, Dev and I were creating something together that was very special. And from then, I just transitioned into wanting Dev to produce the record. And that's exactly what happens over these 7 songs. As I said a little bit earlier on in the podcast, I think one of the reasons that this works so well is because it is 7 tracks and it does feel so concise, and it means that she's allowed to let in a heaviness without giving much reprieve. I think the production gives a reprieve, but I think lyrically this can get quite dark at times. And I feel like having 7 tracks just means it's just like a smack in the face that can come and go fleetingly and leave you with such an impact, rather than filling it with moments that just didn't really need to be there. And I think Pitchfork captured that when they talked about the EP, where they said it benefits from its unorthodox length. At 7 songs, it's fuller than most EPs, yet too short to be considered an album. Somehow it works, and it does work. And I guess words like Pitchfork are kind of important to the story that I'm trying to tell about True, because this is the moment that Solange stops being considered as Beyonce's little sister and starts being considered as her own very cool artist, because obviously Pitchfork still has that kind of pull at this time, and she starts to run in alternative circles. I mean, I personally was already impressed with the work that she'd been doing on Soul Angel and had recognized this, but this is huge in the repositioning of Solange in general, and leads to a point where she can just get mass critical appraisal for a project like A Seat at the Table and also find mainstream success. And I really liked that happened with True. And what I think is so important about True, that it's also a massive groundbreaker in terms of this kind of pop music being recognized at all by publications like this, and also alternative music fans. And later down the track, we get someone like Sky Ferreira, and I feel like her song Everything Is Embarrassing, like Losing You is sort of the blueprint for that. In a way, whether intentional or not, I actually think that she'd already made that song before Losing You came out. But it's just a major moment where you can tell the thinking in people's mind is starting to shift around pop music. And it's just because this is so damn well made. And every single song on this, I think, is just exquisite in the way that it's done. Look Good with Trouble even, which is one of the slow jams on this, just like elongated vocals and just everything drawn out, the harmonies immaculate, but still got those really sticky pop hooks that you can latch onto. The closing song, Bad Girls, as well, another incredible moment. And then I think when they really lean into the 80s on a song like Some Things Never Seem to Fucking Work, which is just like total frustration and despair, but turned into something really fun. I think that it's really cool.
Some things never seem to fucking work.
And the reason that I decided to start talking about this record is because you'll notice that like Raven Lenae's song Love Me Not, which is a massive hit right now and has been major for Raven's career, initially starts going viral because people start mashing it up with Solange's Losing You. And it in turn introduces both a new audience to Raven's work and leads her on the path to stardom that she's on right now. But it also introduces a lot of people to Losing You in general, a whole new generation. And it's incredible when I was hearing those mashups, how fresh this still sounds. And I was thinking about a lot of the music that has come since True and how important True has been for that music. Not only Raven Lenae, but I think even Tyler the Creator's work is incredibly influenced by this. I think Jessie Ware's work, I think FKA Twigs, Tinashe certainly in the early parts of her career, and even Christine and the Queens has named a lot that he finds Solange to be one of the most impactful artists of his time too. And I just think that like this is still an underappreciated gem where people who know that Losing You and True is so special, but I don't think enough people know it, to be honest with you. I'm going to talk about my top 3 songs from this EP, and this is really hard because I honestly love all 7 of them, but in number 3, I'm going to go with Lovers in the Parking Lot.
Where, oh, where's the man that landed in my hands when I say fall? I pushed you head over my heels until I pushed you fall.
I think that this is like twinkly and it's shiny. I just remember absolutely loving the video where she's in that like mall after hours and doing all those like elongated, very Solange poses. I think that this is perhaps one of the like most pop forward songs on the record, but with a totally anthemic chorus that is so impressive to me. In number 2, I'm going to go with Don't Let Me Down.
I love all of your love for me. Tell 'em all of your love for baby.
As I said, the desperation that comes through in this song is so beautiful to me. I love how she's just like crying out basically in it, but over this really slow, moody late night beat that almost feels you're driving after rain has just been hitting the road. You know, when the lights start glowing off the water of it. It is such a cool song and it sounds so damn slick. And then in number 1, you can't go past it, but Losing You. This is like one of the most impressive pop songs of my time. And as I said, just totally rewired my brain, made me think about pop music differently, made me think about how important melody was, made me think about how important the choice of words are. Like that opening line of just tell me the truth, am I losing you for good, is so direct, straight to the point, and just stabs you straight in your heart, which I think is so, so cool. They're my top 3. I would be so interested to know your top 3 and also your thoughts on this record in general, what it did for you when you heard it. And if you haven't heard it, I hope that this convinces you to go and listen to it. If you want to suggest any albums or EPs even that I should do as part of this series, please feel free to drop them in my comments or drop them in the Discord. You can also comment down below if you're listening on YouTube or Spotify. That is it for today's podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Make sure you're following the Pop Pod. You can also find us on Instagram if you want to follow the.poppod, and also the Discord. The link for that is down below if you want to join that. Until next time, have a great day.